Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome. Today's topic is John S. Ray, 1924 to 2011, Part 2. This is a continuation of an interview I did with my father in 1989. John S. Ray. Good evening, Mr. Ray. Good evening, Peter. Do you remember about Rachel, your mother's sister? Yes. We knew Rachel and David also quite well because they lived in Marion for some time after they were married. David Morgan. Rachel had a very sparkling personality. She had dark black hair, a very attractive lady, a very pleasant person. You have to remember these were Depression years, the 1930s. Nobody had much of any money. That's the reason why Rachel and David and Lenore and Dale lived in the family home even after they got married. They simply didn't have enough money. David Morgan was a typical salesman. He could just talk your arm right off. He was just full of it. They were happily married for a very long time. Didn't Rachel get sort of depressed later on? That was very much later on. Did losing her daughter have something to do with it? It probably did. Her beautiful older daughter Marilyn was married with children and got bulbar polio, which took her in a matter of hours. I'm sure that was an enormous shock to everyone who was close to her husband, her children, her mother, her father. Did you know Marilyn very well? Oh, sure. Was she about your age? Approximately. I can't recall whether she was older or younger. But she was your cousin. Yes, she was Nancy Tyler's older sister, and Rachel Maynor was her younger sister. Did you talk with Marilyn much? Oh, we knew her quite well, she and Nancy and Rachel, the three of them. They had a brother Richard who was born later on, and I only have a very vague memory of him. What do you remember about Helen, your mother's sister? Helen lived down the street from us. It was on Windsor Street, but down some distance, maybe a quarter of a mile south. She and John Lacey were amongst the better off financially. I recall that John Lacey worked for a steel company, in an executive position of some kind. I recall back in the 1930s that he was earning $300 a month, which was a great deal of money at that time. Both Helen and John were very active in what was called the Lecture Recital Club. This group, I believe, was responsible for bringing guest musical artists to Marion, Ohio for concerts. And Helen and John had a very nice house on Windsor Street, and they also had a very nice backyard. I recall on many occasions lovely parties, dinner parties, after the concerts, where they would be host to the guest artist or conductor of the symphony in town, who would come to their house, and Helen was an excellent cook. Both she and John were excellent musicians. Helen played the piano. As a matter of fact, I took piano lessons from her for a period of time. Her husband John had a very nice voice and did a lot of singing. So the two of them were very active in musical circles and in artistic circles in Marion. The two of them lived a life that was initially kind of different from that lived by the others because their income was so good. John must have been older than Helen. No, I don't think so. I don't know John Lacey's educational background. He knew what he was doing in the steel business because he was very highly regarded by those around him. What about Ted? Well, Ted and Fred both left Marion to go to school in Cleveland. I think they both went to Case Western Reserve University for undergraduate school. They both played in a band to help pay their way through school. I can't remember if they both played the banjo or just one of them. They were not around much. They would come back for some of the holiday gatherings, and I recall their coming back to Marion to hunt. They were both great hunters. There would be a season each summer, a rabbit season and a pheasant season, and they would come back and go out and hunt and bring back rabbits and pheasants to Grandma Zook's house. These would be given to the relations. They would bring back so many of them they couldn't possibly use them all. They were very good shots. They'd bring in all these birds and rabbits. What do you remember about Ted's personality? Ted was held in a very, very high regard by all members of the family. He was very generous with his medical expertise because I think everybody in the family had medical problems at various times. Ted was always willing to help and give his advice, and invariably his advice was very good advice. Being a doctor was seen as a very good thing at that time, because if you have a medical problem, you need a doctor. What about his personality? Well, he was more laid back. Did he have a personality like Fred? They both had very strong personalities, and Ted and Fred used to argue something terrible with each other. I know that more from history. What did they argue about? Everything, because they had such strong personalities and were so close age-wise. I think there was a great spirit of competition between them. They were both exceedingly aggressive, exceedingly intelligent, and they both were very successful in their fields. Do you remember about the relationships among the brothers and sisters? Well, Gertrude and Helen were close. They both went to Oberlin College, the conservatory, briefly, till the money ran out. I think they both were there just 1 year. Lenore and Rachel were often referred to together. Were Tommy and John close? Well, there was quite a difference in age between the two of them. It seems like they were kind of similar. Tommy and John? John had no musical bent that I'm aware of. Tommy did. They were both pretty liberal politically, right? I'm not sure of Tommy's political beliefs. I recall there was a wooden swing on the front porch at Grandma and Grandpa's house, which was suspended from the ceiling, that we would sit on the swing. Although that front porch was not all that big, it would be just stuffed with people sitting on that swing. And there was a railing alongside the outside of the porch, and you could sit on that wooden railing. Do you remember the roles people played at those family gatherings? I remember that everybody used to work. There was a lot of work to be done. Grandma Zook was a tremendous worker. Well, I think Ted and Fred were the most highly regarded, had the most influence because they both had been so successful in their chosen professions. People looked to them for guidance? Yes. They had authority. Ted and Fred were both very successful financially. That tends to put a person above the group. Most of the activity at these family gatherings, as I recall, was just talking. Everybody seemed to enjoy each other's company. Do you remember how your Grandma and Grandpa Zook related to their adult children? I'm sorry, but I can't really respond to that question. Do you remember if any of your aunts and uncles were particularly interested in what you were doing? Not specifically. I think everybody was interested pretty much in what everybody else was doing. I guess it was pretty crowded at Christmas inside the house. Exceedingly crowded. We used to have Santa Claus come over at Grandma's when I was a small child. I remember going over to the house with a feeling of enormous anticipation, and Santa Claus would ring a bell outside the window before he would come in. I remember when that would happen, I would be so excited I was just about to burst. Very often I would be seated right by the door where Santa Claus would come in, and I would be one of the first to greet him when he came in. He would come in with his red-white outfit and long white beard and a big bag. Each of the grandchildren would have to do something for Santa Claus, say a poem or play a musical instrument or sing or do something, not just stand there and receive gifts. What did you do? I cannot tell you because I do not remember. Who was Santa Claus? It was usually John Zook. At least that's what I recall. You'll have to confirm that with my sister Carol and my brother Dick. Do you remember when you first found out that Santa Claus is not real? That's a gradually evolving thing. It does not occur overnight. And it was not really a shock because the realization occurred over such a long period of time. Some kid didn't tell you in an alley? I don't remember any such thing as that. Do you remember going to the Methodist church? Yes, I do. The Epworth Methodist Church. You went with your mom and dad and brother and sister? I believe that we did. Did you like it there? Yes. I remember being in Sunday school all through high school. We had some very good Sunday school teachers. We had a large balcony, and it was very enjoyable. I remember sitting up in the balcony of that church every Sunday and listening to the service and participating in it. Were all the Zooks there that were living in Marion? I do not remember just who went to church. I do not remember going to church with members of the family other than our own. Seems to me I remember seeing Grandpa Zook there. I remember an elderly white-haired gentleman who was the minister, and I cannot at this time recall his name. Did he give good sermons? I believe he did. I can't be more specific than that. Did you fall asleep in church, or were you stimulated by the spiritual atmosphere? I think I was not too stimulated at a young age. I think my spiritual growth started to develop after I went to college, and then particularly, I recall after being in Alaska for one of those college summers, being just overcome by the exceedingly great beauty of what I was seeing, and the realization came to me that there had to be some great omniscient power to put all of this together.
So you had a spiritual awakening in Alaska?
Well, it was not a mountaintop experience like Grandpa Zook had. It was kind of a gradual, developing thing. I remember being up there in Alaska and looking at those magnificent mountains and the beautiful water, just unbelievable scenery. I thought, boy, this is no accident that all this happened. Somebody or some person or some being of incredible power has done this. There are so many tremendous, wonderful things to be seen in nature, not only in the mountains and waters, the birds and animals in the water. The conclusion is just inescapable, that there's got to be some super powerful omniscient being that's in control. The theory that this earth just happened by accident doesn't make any sense. It just couldn't be.
You know, I've heard that in your mother's childhood home, her father would read the Bible in the morning, and they would all kneel at the breakfast table. Did anything like that happen in your home as a boy?
It seems to me we said the prayers before meals. I don't recall kneeling at home.
Did your friends in school have as big a family as you had?
It was unusual. It was exceedingly hard to support such a family as that. I think it was a great challenge for each of my aunts and uncles growing up, because they had to rely much more on themselves. They didn't have parents who were able to help them out financially. They were able to help them out spiritually, which is much more important. In terms of material assistance, it was pretty tough. So the individual had to kind of make their own way, getting into the workforce.
What were the Lakeside reunions like in Lakeside, Ohio?
Well, they were special because of the different activities, but also because we were on Lake Erie. Marion was not on a lake. There was a quarry, but Marion, Ohio was not on a lake, so the only place to go swimming was at the YMCA. The idea of being right on Lake Erie, which Lakeside is, was a tremendous plus. You could go right in the water from off the rocks or dive in from the pier. Also the tennis courts.
Basketball?
I don't remember basketball. I remember there was a dance hall in Erie Beach just out the west side of Lakeside. We used to go over and dance there. That was a lot of fun.
They don't have that anymore.
No, that's gone. There used to be a drugstore also there in Erie Beach that had slot machines in it. Slot machines at that time were still legal in Ohio. There were no slot machines in Lakeside because Lakeside, of course, was connected with the Methodist Church. But just a few feet outside the gate were these slot machines. As a kid, they used to be one of the most exciting things we used to do, try to get a few pennies together to play the slot machines.
Did you get a pretty good turnout at those Lakeside family reunions?
Yeah, we did. We used to have large crowds. We used to have to rent more than one house. There were occasions when we had to rent 2 or 3 houses.
Do you remember any drinking at the family gatherings?
Alcohol, as I recall, was forbidden at Lakeside. I don't remember any drinking at Lakeside, and I don't remember any drinking down in Marion. I didn't start to do any drinking till I got to college.
You couldn't drink in Marion when you came home from college?
I remember drinking before Harold Freilich got married, but...
Uncle Ferd?
Uncle Ferd took charge of that.
And he drank alone.
Apparently so. He apparently had some sort of still or wine fermenting equipment down in his basement.
You're still looking forward to this year at Lakeside, eh?
Yes, I certainly am.
What is it that you look forward to?
Well, I look forward to seeing people, first of all, and sitting down and having a talk with them about what's been happening in their lives since a year ago.
Who in particular are you looking forward to seeing this year?
Well, particularly this year, I'm looking forward to seeing my brother Dick, because since last year I had this open heart surgery, and he had the identical surgery. He had 2 valves replaced several years ago, and I had one replaced 7 months ago. I think it will be very interesting to compare notes with him about that. Also, he and Joan called me recently about a little court thing that they were having in their area, which I believe has now come and gone. I'm sure that will be interesting to hear just how that worked out. Also, Dick's had some severe health problems with his kidneys and whatnot over the years. It's good just to see him. He's a good person. He's got a good head, and you can talk with him about just any subject. And we particularly want to see Lenore, because we have not seen her since Dale died. We want to continue to comfort her in any way that we can, or be of any help to her in getting her life organized to go on without Dale. It's going to be an exceedingly difficult adjustment, because they were married, I think, for over 60 years.
And Harold?
It's always a pleasure to see Harold if he can get there.
Your closest cousin.
Yes, if he can manage to get there. I believe he did make it last year. We had the pleasure of playing bridge. As a matter of fact, since Gus is coming, we'll have 4 again for bridge if Harold comes. We had a lot of fun, your mother and I playing bridge with her mother Augusta and Harold at Lakeside.
Lakeside had sort of a low ebb 10 years ago. It seems pretty strong now.
Well, we never seem to know from year to year exactly who's going to come. It always seems to work out. I hope nobody gets hurt this year like Mark did last year playing basketball.
Were you close to Jim Zook as a young fellow?
I don't remember being very close to him. I was probably closer to his older brother John Clark Zook, who died some time ago. George Ann was just a little girl, yes. She and Carol, I think, are roughly the same age. I'm looking forward to seeing the Tylers from Michigan. They have a daughter, Linda, who has been very sick. I wanted to hear more about that and if there's anything we can do to help. Also, I was looking forward to seeing, it seems strange to say it now, Rachel and David Maynor. It used to be Rachel and David Morgan. She married Jim Maynor and she has a son named David. David was involved in a bad automobile accident a while back, and I have no idea if they're going to be able to go to Lakeside or not. If they can, we'd certainly love to see them.
So you're glad you have kept these reunions going?
I am. I probably enjoy them more than anybody else that goes to them. It's not all that much bother as far as I'm concerned. It's a matter of renting the cottage and getting out 2 letters each year. Your mother has a lot of work because of the packing and thinking about the food and so forth.
Do you remember your Aunt Nettie Zook?
No.
She was dead before you were born?
I believe she was. I have no memory of seeing her.
You've heard talk about her?
Yes.
She was sort of a modern woman, wasn't she?
She married very late in life. She worked in Cleveland and had a pretty good job and did a lot of traveling. She seemed to be ahead of her time.
A women's libber?
Well, I don't know about women's lib. Yes, independent. Lenora would be the one to speak with, and you really ought to give some serious thought to just exactly what questions you want to ask Lenore. Because if Helen doesn't come, Lenora would be the last of the Zook children to come to Lakeside. Fred's health has been poor for some time. I would guess that Lenore would be the only one of the 10 Zook siblings at Lakeside this year.
Has the ZFMC Zook Family Memories collection given you a different perspective on your family?
Oh, I think it's made me somewhat more appreciative of them. It's made me go back and try to remember some things I've forgotten. I had a very positive experience growing up in Marion, Ohio. There are problems in any family, but my memories of Marion are very positive.
Which of the ZFMC issues have you liked more than the others?
I think the Civil War diaries of our great-grandfather Zook, because I don't know that I had ever read those before. I read small portions of them at Lakeside, but your having taken the trouble of typing them up makes them so much easier to read. I was also very much interested in the Around the World trip, which Dale and Lenore Hughes made. That journal that Terry Freilich wrote of that trip he took with his father Harold to the Himalaya Mountains of Nepal, I think was exceedingly well done.
And that writing of Anna Zook after she lost her husband?
Very touching. I had never read those writings before. I did not know that they existed.
That gave you a better feel for her?
Yes.
She has been sort of an unknown.
Very unknown. I hope that a picture of her can be located. I'd certainly like to know what this lady looked like. She must have been a very fine person.
Well, those Civil War diaries are very interesting and inspiring, too.
Yes, indeed they are.
Adversity and overcoming it. A tough situation and trying to get along in it. Being away from wife and family. An awful tough thing. Having a conflict between country and family. A lot of guys wouldn't go back to the war after a furlough because they found their families starving.
They say war is hell, and it is for everybody involved.
The price of war, losing a father and a husband.
It really dramatizes it.
It takes war out of a vacuum and gives it flesh and bones. Yes, I think that anyone who has read those diaries has a greater appreciation for the family, for him and for him as the ancestor. No question about it. Your college diaries? Well, I get a kick out of reading those college diaries. I did a lot of crazy things when I was at Oberlin College, undergraduate school. I'm surprised I made it through. Well, you never got seriously debauched in college, not like Anthony Patch from F. Scott Fitzgerald or Mark Ray or Pete Ray. No, it was a balance. I was walking a tightrope and I tried not to fall off. Well, I certainly do appreciate your spending time with us tonight. I know the readers will enjoy your recollections and memories. Is there anything else you wanted to say? I will say the same thing I said at the end of the last tape. I hope that I haven't given you too much inaccurate information. It will be well to test my memory against others, such as my brother and sister. I think this will put together a pretty good issue for the ZFMC. I appreciate that. If there are errors, we can straighten that out. Thank you very much, Mr. Ray, Dad.
Peter, it's been my pleasure. Now we have some comments. The first comment is from John S. Ray. Your latest ZFMC 26 was received here yesterday and read last night with great interest. The color in the cover was outstanding. You must have some state-of-the-art color copying equipment available to you in Switzerland. It's always a pleasure to go back to the long-ago growing-up years. I'm afraid that I've forgotten much more than I remember. Thank you for jogging my memory. Your Switzerland experience will be good material for a future ZFMC. John S. Ray, Cleveland, Ohio, USA. The next is from Rosa Chokolova in Siberia, Russia. Quote, I received your parcel yesterday, the 26th issue. Oh, I was happy. Only at that moment I had realized how much I have missed you and your collections. They are, all of them, former and future, are part of me now. Do you believe me, dear? I could do nothing, only was sitting with it in my hands and smiling and reading. Was almost late for my work. Rosa Chokolova, Tomsk, Siberia, Soviet Union. And the next is from Alice Garcia Ni Ray in the Philippines. Your cover pictures were very nice. They look so real and very colorful. The tape interview is very interesting. There's a certain formality, and yet there's a warmth in it. The questions being asked by the editor were answered so casually that made the readers very much at home while reading it. The growing up of John S. Ray, who is one of the heroes of the ZFMC, was very impressive. The untiring efforts, the loving care of his parents, and the excellent training given to him made him a very successful lawyer and a wonderful person. Alice Garcia Ni Ray, San Juan, Metro Manila, Philippines. And the next is from Augusta Smallshaw, my mother's mother. Really enjoyed the write-up of your dad's youth with the Zook family, at least all he could remember. A big family and came through the Depression well. Augusta Fisher Smallshaw, Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. And the next comment is again from Alice Garcia Ray, quote, I really enjoyed this issue. The front cover photos were really amazing. Everyone here at Restless Educational Center admired the way you have made it. Alice Garcia Ray, Quezon City, Philippines. And the next is from my mother, Ruth Smallshaw Ray, quote, colorific. I was so impressed with the color photos in your latest edition. I sat right down and read it through, thought it was very good. I'll never forget when John first took me to the Zook family Thanksgivings, 46 relatives there. I was quite overwhelmed. I never did get any turkey that year nor the next. You had to get in line early for that. Lenore asked John in the kitchen if he was serious or going to marry me, and John told her, shh, you'll scare her. I remember Grandma Zook was such a loving person, just to everyone. She was so accepting and made you feel so welcome. Ruth Smallshaw Ray, Rocky River, Ohio, USA. The next comment is again from Rosa Chokolova in Siberia, Russia.
I enjoy the latest issue, your father's recollections about Marion, especially his spiritual awakening in Alaska. You see his words, there are so many tremendous, wonderful things to be seen in nature. All this is so close to my heart. I feel you and your family part of me. I wish I could have seen Grandma and Grandpa Zook, those coffee cakes, all your gatherings. Everything is so attracting, so nice. Thank you very much, my boy, for everything. I hope to go on reading the next issues to go on being part of your family. It's fine to feel, Peter. You make a real miracle. You bring us so close. Rosa Chukalova, Tomsk, Siberia, Soviet Union. And finally, we have a comment from Isabel Stevens, who was my godmother. I was surprised and pleased to receive issue number 26 of the ZFMC. I had assumed that these would be put on hold while you were so heavily involved with your teaching duties in Gstaad, Switzerland. I am still mystified as to how you managed to accomplish this feat. Your presentation was novel and certainly very interesting. I found that the relatives, now long gone, whom your father described, came alive with his memories of them. This last issue was fun. It was honest, a very human presentation, rather than glossed over and sophisticated. Isabel Stevens, Rocky River, Ohio, USA. Well, that concludes our talk today about the life of John S. Ray, my wonderful father. If you are doing family history work, I wish you well with it. And thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. God bless you. Take care, and I'll see you next time.